Altered Carbon is set in a dystopian future where human consciousness can be digitized and transferred between bodies. This technology essentially allows the wealthy immortality, effectively making death almost meaningless for the elite. However, for the less affluent, the quality and availability of new bodies depend on their financial means, creating a deep class divide. The show explores deep philosophical questions regarding identity, morality, and the human condition in a society where bodies are mere vessels or shells, and eternity is within reach, if one has the means to afford it. The series seamlessly combines cyberpunk noir with intense action, evoking themes reminiscent of Bladerunner and Ghost in the Shell. It explores the profound ethical consequences of a world where human consciousness is no longer bound to a single body. A similar concept can be found in Nobody Wants to Die, set in the year 2329 in a cyberpunk universe kind of like Fallout, where society is locked in a futuristic world with 1940 aesthetics and flying cars. The story also carries shades of LA noir, following a detective narrative through a gritty, retro-futuristic lens, complete with all the cheesy, old detective movie cliches. Spoilers ahead. So, Icarus has been invented, enabling humans to transfer their consciousness and prolong their lives. When you die, you store your consciousness in a digital memory bank. However, you need to pay the body subscription service. This is a tax that is mandatory for people 21 and up, and if you don't pay, your body will automatically be taken off to auction. No big deal. I'm sure the general populace will be fine with not owning their own bodies when they turn 21. Detective James Cara is watching an old detective movie at the drive-in with his wife, Rachel. And in the middle of their conversation, James is hit with a piercing headache, and these electrical, ethereal blue tendrils begin to spread out all over the car. Taking some pills named ambrosia seems to ease everything. There's a lot of Greek-inspired names so far. Icarus, which is the blood of the gods, ambrosia, food or drink of the gods. Taking a swig of alcohol with our flask, James turns to see that Rachel is not next to him. He's hallucinating. We hear news on the radio about the president signing a bill that would reduce the age limit of free body subscriptions, that thing that people are mandated to pay if they don't want their bodies ripped from them and sold into auction. You see, as of right now, up until the age of 21, you don't have to pay the subscription tax, and the bill would make it so that you have to start paying that tax a lot sooner. However, unlike this body subscription tax in this dystopian world, hitting the like and subscribe button costs you nothing, I promise. We get a call from our police chief. James wants to go back to work, but Chief mentions an accident he was involved in only 2 weeks ago, so the committee doesn't think he's ready to return.
The accident was barely 2 weeks ago. Look, the committee already thought you were a hot mess. Trying to come back this soon, that's just got him convinced. You're no fucking medical miracle, James.
Chief also states that without our synchronization tests, officially, we can't come back. However, unofficially, he tasks James with an off-the-record case.
My hands are tied. Officially.
Yeah? So unofficially, I'm all ears.
To help with the case, we're partnered with a liaison, Sarah. Opening the car door, we see we're actually in a flying car over the dark, futuristic New York City. Sarah and James get acquainted, and she shows great ambivalence about working with him, noting something about the accident and how he messed up half a city with a train. Flying off, James narrates to himself just like in the old movies, and he says that he's 120 years old.
Having a goal, any goal, is better than inactivity. An alternative to focusing on the symptoms. The memories. I'm 120 years old. And I don't have any strength left to keep recalling the past.
And that's an interesting concept. For you listening or watching this video right now, if you could keep changing bodies and live forever, would you even want that? But then again, at what point do you stop being you? Our task is to get the Icarus out of the corpse of an Edward Green and take it to a consciousness transmission center. Green is somebody in a position of power and wealth. Chief wants James to take care of this unofficially because Green has Chief in his back pocket. So it is off to Olympus we go, above the clouds and the acid rain, where the high society can afford to live. We find Green hanging from the last cherry tree, like the very last cherry tree in the entire world. Now it's burned to a char. Unsure of what happened, we used technology to reconstruct the scene to find evidence. It basically looks like we're controlling time. While searching for evidence, we also find out that Green is the one, or at least one of the people who founded Icarite. In fact, we even see his signature on a signed Declaration of Immortality, kind of like the Declaration of Independence, but here, everybody has a natural right to immortality. We find a picture of Green and his wife, whom we discover died a natural death, and Green, unable to cope with the loss of his love, changed laws to implement and force immortality amongst the people. We also find a secret file on a desk addressed to Green with a bunch of names on it. Later on, Chief calls us to find out what's going on. We inform him that Green was murdered, and Chief decides that he wants us to cover it up, to report it as an accident. After more detective work, we discover that Green's Icarite has been melted and that he has died a true death. But who murdered Green?
I've seen this before. It's not some random glitch. The thing's been oxidized, understand? Somebody wanted to make damn sure Green wasn't coming back.
Oh, I am in deep shit. Look, he's hanging from a fucking tree. What someone?
Soon after, we have another hallucination attack upon finding this bottle with a snake on it. It slithers up our arm as the voice of a stranger comically hisses our name. Snapping out of it, Chief warns us to leave because the feds are on the way. Back at the apartment, we learn that James was a former Major League Baseball player, that he and Rachel were expecting a baby, that the bathroom is shared amongst the community in the apartments, and that the people in this universe have to decontaminate due to the pollution outside. During a conversation with Sarah, she inquires about Rachel's passing, about how she unalived herself, but James won't have it as he's convinced that somebody killed her. After some detective work, I wasn't a fan of doing this, I don't know, just trying to connect the evidence on this makeshift board just wasn't really for me. But I digress. We mentioned to Sarah that vial with the snake that we found back at Olympus. She runs some tests on it to discover that it is poison and finds prints on it that belong to somebody named Dmitry Kovalev. However, in order to find Kovalev, we need to get on a giant air balloon called Icarus that is only accessible to rich people. But luckily, the plot moves forward because on cue, the very same Icarus comes crashing down, giving us the opportunity to hop on it and find Kovalev. At the Icarus bar, it looks like an explosion went off, bodies strewn all over the place, so of course, it's reconstruction time. James notes how everything was blown and wasted, except he was talking about the wasted alcohol, spoken like a true alcoholic. While uncovering the mysteries of what's in the safe at the bar and why there was a shootout that included Kovalev, we find a paper describing a law with a long-term goal to reduce the age of the free body subscription from 21 to 18, meaning that by the age of 18, your body is not yours and you basically need to start paying taxes just to live. And if you can't, you're screwed. Wait, that sounds like real life. And not only are they planning to lower the age, they were going to increase the costs as well. We discovered that undercover agents were aboard the Icarus. In fact, one of them got impaled while having a shootout with Kovalev, after which Kovalev blew himself up with a bunch of dynamite which caused the explosion, causing Icarus to come crashing down. In the safe, we find scotch, which of course we take, it's not like they were going to drink it anyways, a card, and a note from Green to Kovalev telling him to complete the plan. But why did Kovalev do all this? What is the plan? On our way to evacuate, James hears a voice in his earpiece. He doesn't introduce himself, we only know him as the Stranger. However, James thinks that he is the murderer, the one behind Icarus crashing. And again, I don't know why the Stranger talks to us in a bad, corny anime villain voice.
What can I do for you? And how much can I help you understand?
Unable to find a way out, the Stranger tells us to look for the body that Kovalev was trying to reach. The body belongs to a George Boyle. His name was on that secret document back on Olympus. His family was the one who purveyed Icarite. Or was it Green? I thought it was Green. I guess Green and this family both did it. The Stranger wants us to destroy Boyle's Icarite, to buy time for the poor people, to slow down the plans to decrease the free body sub-age. I chose not to. But not because I'm in favor of the rich getting richer, I just don't like being told what to do. even if it is in a video game. It still doesn't answer why Kovalev wanted to kill him. With Icarus blowing up even further, we evacuate by jumping out and onto our car. Hovering above the streets of Manhattan, we spend midnight pondering over that magnificent scotch that we tactically procured. James, looking for connection and communication, finds it in Sarah. They talk about politics, how lowering the age limit for free body subs is going to suck for the poor people. They talk about morality, good and evil, life after death, and during the discussion, James is hit with another headache.
I hope it's true.
Damn it. Bloody hell.
James? James, what's going on?
He explains that the body he is in belonged to a junkie previously. These are the types of bodies that the impoverished can afford, if they can even afford one. James explains that he's been having synchronization issues. His mind and body are fighting each other, causing tremendous pain. Sarah asks if he's taking his ambrosia, the medicine that helps bodies sync with their new host, and if he's taking regular synchronization tests. The synchro tests are basically therapy to help the minds acclimate to the new bodies. James writes her off and disregards her as this is now his fourth body, and theorizes that human consciousness eventually fades, even if they can technically live forever by continuing to switch bodies. That's when sirens sound off and police show up demanding to know what we're doing there. Seriously, James has a perfectly good view of the city from his apartment. Why not just drink there? The coppers pull up our data and are surprised to find out that we are the psycho from the train.
Holy shit. It really is that psycho from the train.
And then soon after, the cops find a bolo, be on the lookout, for our car as it pertained to the Icarus incident. I started freaking out. I don't know what to say, so I clicked the option to just tell them the truth.
Okay. I'll spill. Yes, I was on the Icarus, but they threw me off the case. Chief Steiner himself gave the...
James, you stupid cunt! Will you just shut the fuck up? You're making it worse!
I didn't know. I was scared. I had evidence on me. Sarah called me an idiot. The cops get ready to detain and take me in. However, Sarah sends them a fake burglary call, and the cops immediately leave.
Repeat, all nearby units. Staff, repeat, burglary in progress. Corner of 11th and 58, floor 117.
Ah, fuck this guy. Let's go.
Relieved, we take another swig of whiskey before presumably driving home. Everything fades to black as we open our eyes to see a stark contrast in our environment. We are in the water, at a beach. It's sunny and vibrant with colors. Far away on the beach, we see Rachel. James calls out to her as we walk forward, but then gray clouds quickly roll in, bringing darkness from above. Icarite chains begin to snap on our wrists, and before we can get to Rachel, it pulls us back and under the water. I guess we blacked out while driving home because we regained consciousness after smashing into the railing at our apartment. Looking out, we see the city is now glowing orange, and we can hear the cries of thousands of people. The people are having a riot. Fires are raging all around, and the police are trying to contain the situation. Catching a paper falling from the sky, it reads, "Give back our bodies." The people are enraged and have had enough of the rich getting richer, pillaging from the poor, literally taking their bodies from them just because they can't afford to pay the taxes. I'm pretty sure anybody in their right mind would be beyond livid. James steps back into his wrecked apartment, the aftermath of Icarus's crash, when Hestia, his home AI system, warns him to decontaminate. But before he can, he suffers another desync attack. Hallucinations of his dead wife flood his mind. Blue Icarite tendrils creep through the room, pushing him to find ambrosia fast, or he will die. After a frantic search, he locates it in the bathroom, barely avoiding death. Next, he rushes to take a synchro test, something that he needs in order to officially get his job back. Guided by the voice of a psychologist, he's mentally transported to a baseball field where he confronts memories of his past lives. We see that he was a former MLB player turned detective after failing to sync with his new body. He recalls marrying Rachel and his love for old detective movies. But then, a mental block appears with a haunting memory of the train accident. He remembers chasing somebody with his former partner, Seth, before an explosion, but then the details are hazy. As he digs deeper, despite the psychologist's warnings, James uncovers a body face down in the dirt. When he turns it over, it's him. The scene turns red as tendrils erupt, leading him towards his apartment window where Rachel appears, only to step off and fall. Back in the apartment, James punches Hestia after learning that it would still take about another year before he's back on the force. Calling Sarah up, still wanting to find out what happened with Green and Kovalev, we fire up the makeshift detective board. Puzzling pieces together, we connect that Green and Kovalev both had a final death, that they were both up to something and they had a plan. We surmise that somebody back on Icarus was trying to buy blueprints for Green's apartment, and that somebody was actually sent by the chief. But why did he want the blueprints? What is back at Green's apartment? Before leaving, Hestia tells us that the synchro tests that we are required to take just to live and officially get back into the working force costs almost $1,000.
Diagnostics complete. Repair cost and fine $938.
Fuck you!
Back on Olympus, while the cops are distracted with the riot, we find a secret wall that we can access using the black card that we got from the safe. With the wall locking behind us, we lose our connection to Sarah. Turns out, Green had a huge secret area with its own elevator and a rich dead guy. On our way down the elevator, something happens, causing us to crash. Concussed and discombobulated, we hear Rachel echoing something that she's been saying since the very beginning of the game.
Don't you already know who the murderer is?
As we step through the door, the stranger's voice slips back onto comms, his words slithering into our ear as we enter a lavish open room. It feels like the remnants of an exclusive gathering. Scanning the scene, it becomes clear that this party was for the elite. Bodies are scattered throughout, their fates sealed by some unseen massacre. As we piece together the horror, realization dawns. There was a killer among them, somebody who wiped out the entire upper-class gathering. Near a grand piano, we find a notebook filled with sinister plans, strategies to form a secret society, one that would control the masses, keeping them distracted and docile. It's clear to James that the stranger must be the murderer, determined to dismantle the grand scheme these powerful figures were working to set in motion. Suddenly, the lights cut out.
Did you do this?
Someone's being paranoid here. It's just fucking wiring.
We're plunged into total darkness, fumbling to get the power back on. And of course, the stranger takes this chance to try and get under our skin, bringing up Sarah, the name that we apparently whispered when we collapsed on the elevator. But we brush him off, flipping the switch. The power returns, but so do these holograms, playing out scenes that I can't show you on YouTube. In the middle of the room, a giant cylinder rises, revealing a man on a bed being tangled and held up by Icarite wires. He was into some seriously messed up stuff, getting off on dying. Piecing together what happened, we notice cameras in the room. And trying to find the monitoring center, we turn a secret lever which takes us down, deeper into Green's other secret chamber. Green was keeping and preserving the youngest bodies possible and keeping them off the books too. He also had his own Icarite transfer machine, so that he, or anybody in his secret circle, would be able to transfer bodies. How was Green getting these bodies and why was nobody looking for them? Well, he was funding orphanages, and as soon as the kids turned 21, he would take those orphans. It's like a sick farm, except for human bodies. When we check the recordings to see what happened, expecting to see the stranger, we instead see Green. Green is the one killing the secret society. James aggravatedly demands to know how the stranger controlled Green and got him to do this, but the stranger says he isn't like Sarah Kai. James, confused and now worried about how he got his partner's name, immediately runs to try and stop the stranger from hurting her. Before leaving, the stranger again offers us a choice. We leave the door open so that the cops can find the secret society and allow them to transfer to new bodies, or close the door, let the secret society stay hidden, leaving their Icarites there and unfound almost indefinitely. Just knowing that the stranger wants us to close the door and leave them there to rot is enough for me to do the opposite. Acid rain pouring down on our windshield, we rush to the slums, the dark future of Liberty Island in Manhattan, complete with a destroyed Statue of Liberty. To say this area is a mess is an understatement. This dump makes the detective's apartment look like Mount Olympus. We park down where a giant satellite is, assuming that if Sarah needed to communicate, she would need power and connection. Bursting through the door that we think Sarah is behind, we make haste, hoping the stranger hasn't hurt her. Things get weird here. On top of a desynchronization attack and falling through the floor, we get shot at, and we hear a voice. It sounds like a mix of the stranger and Sarah, so I don't know what to think anymore. Is Sarah the stranger? Has she been playing us this whole time? I guess it would make sense, but still unsure of the situation, I chose not to shoot back at her, thinking that it would be a ploy to trick me. However, I get shot instead. Waking up to Sarah calling my name, we see her stitching us up. She looks old and says that she thought somebody broke into her house, so she shot. James asks her what happened to her original body, and then she gets mad that we ask. After taking some time to look around, we discover we're actually in an old museum. Catching up with Sarah, she tells us her background story, that she grew up in the slums, she and her sister found this museum and turned it into a home. When her sister turned 21, they couldn't afford to pay the body subscription tax, so her body got taken for auction and her mind got dumped into the digital bank. Sarah has been working hard to get money to free her sister, going so far as to rent out her own body on the black market. She would later reveal that she's renting it out to a Jane Salma, the famous psychologist, which explains why Sarah is in the body she's currently in. This system is messed up. In the kitchen, we find a news article talking about how it was proven that the longer a consciousness stays in the memory bank, the more gradual memory disorders present themselves. Another article beneath that shows that the transference of consciousness to new bodies does not guarantee the continuity of that individual's consciousness, and that synchronization is difficult for some people due to this. Getting back to work, we fire up the detective board to try and solve the mystery behind Green's plan and involvement with all these powerful figures. One particular piece of evidence stands out. It's a recording of a therapy session with Salma and Green.
How did you describe it? That you're losing control of yourself? It's a kind of consciousness erosion. We'll increase the dose of ambrosia and the amount of synchro tests. It should help.
I need something better.
We don't have anything else yet. I'm working on it.
It's one big joke.
Salma sounds familiar, don't you think?
Shit, I thought she was gonna get herself a synthesizer. Erosion of consciousness. Never heard of something like that.
Neither did I. That means he was weaker than we thought.
It's revealed that Green was undergoing an erosion of consciousness as a result of his constant transferences to different bodies. Salma suggests that he just takes more pills and do more synchronization tests to stabilize himself. Sarah mentions that Green was acting rather psychotic and isn't sure whether to think that he was going crazy or being controlled. She offers the idea that it might just be simply about tearing down the city. But then again, why? Who was controlling Green if somebody was controlling him? Was he being controlled at all? At this point in the game, I'm still really confused, and when Sarah asks me who's behind everything, I just say the killer because I don't know. It's only now, as I'm rewatching the footage and writing this script, that things kind of start to make sense. But I'll give my assessment at the very end. Trying to figure out who the killer is and believing that Green was poisoned by the killer, remember that snake vial we found at the beginning of the game? Sarah looks for records of similar cases where individuals were poisoned and went crazy. However, when she does the search, James pops up for his incident on the train, where he had some sort of cyberpsychosis, blowing up a train, supposedly destroying half a city and killing many people. I'm surprised that this cop only got a suspension. Against Sarah's cautions, James heads back to the scene of the crime, of his crime. She gives us a new earpiece prior to our departure so the stranger can't interfere with our comms. Before hopping out of our car, we hallucinate and hear our old partner Seth talking to us. It half sounds like he's talking directly to James, but it also sounds like he's having a playback of a memory. Seth is telling James to not go chase the culprit, but James insists that he's going to do anything to catch him. On the radio, we also hear news of gunshots going off at Central Park, where a memorial is being held for Green. I guess the people decided it was time to riot and eat the rich there too. The desync issues begin to exacerbate as we approach the train crash site. We see the remnants of bodies and bullet holes. Among the bodies is James's as well. The scene looks just like you might imagine. Normal people traveling on a train before a hail of bullets stormed through, and a crashing inferno devoured everything on the train. When we reconstruct the scene, it's different this time. We slip into first-person view, and it's the view of the killer, or of James, shooting everybody while trying to shoot the culprit.
Look, then. It's you, James. The real you.
And then the stranger is in our ear again, despite having a new earpiece, leading me to believe that maybe this is all in our head. We're stumbling all over the place, coughing up blood, hallucinating multiple Rachels, and it seems like the Icarite tendrils are going to wrap us up and finally end this misery.
That would be wrong. We would be bad people. We really are. Because we're still alive.
She would never. It's my own fears, feeding on her death.
That last part that Rachel says about them being wrong and bad people because they're still alive reveals a lot about Rachel's persona, what she really thought about the whole living forever thing. The desynchronization side effects worsening, Icarite encroaching upon us further, we discover the truth about the train incident. James was chasing a dealer and killed civilians in a frenzy. But this dealer isn't any dealer. Guys, this is the dealer who sold poison to his wife, melting her Icarite, giving her a true death. And now I understand why he was willing to cut a swath through civilians. He loves his wife. I love my wife. I might do the same if I was in that situation. Seth is in the car hovering next to the train, trying to get James to calm down and just leave. But that's when the dealer shoots Seth's wheel, causing him to crash into the train.
I'm losing control!
At the end of the train car is the same baby door from back at our apartment, and the murderer begins to taunt James. Now, there is some force dragging us to the door, and that's when James picks up a knife. With one arm, he tries to stab himself, but with his other arm, he stops himself. Seems like he's just fighting himself. If that's not a sign that James is crazy, I don't know what is. I just let him stab himself in the arm, and he gets dragged further, his blood painting the train red. We drop into the light, finding ourselves in our would-be baby's room. Now, one thing that I haven't addressed yet, because even now I'm still not sure what the relevance is the snake with the dates in the middle. We see one here, in the baby room, one back at Icarus on the safe, and another back at Green's apartment on the cherry tree. Maybe you could drop a comment down below letting me know what you think this is. With the murderer telling us that we died and gave up a long time ago, he says that he's just trying to help us as we open the vial, and it looks like we're about to drink the poison. Then the scene cuts to black. Sarah wakes us up and tells us to go to the Revolution at Central Park because Salma is there with her body, and she wants to make sure that her body is safe. I guess James going through the mental and physical turmoil doesn't mean much to her. She doesn't even ask if we're okay.
James? Are you okay?
So yes, we found out what actually happened at the train station. I'm convinced James is definitely not in his right mind, but I don't know what this whole situation has to do with Green or Kovalev. The city is burning. Sarah confirms what we said earlier. The poor have come to eat the rich. A police car smashes into us, causing us to crash into the ground. When we came to, a mob was about to eviscerate a cop, and I let them because it felt like the wrong thing to do. Moving forward and jumping across a building, we see cops fighting the mob, but I realized they all look the same, like they're all literally the same character models. Continuing to where the ceremony is to find Sarah's body, the cops stop me as I cross the bridge. It's Chief, We tell him that we're there for Salma, and he asks us what business we have with the psychologist that used to work with Green. We still have yet to figure out who the chief is working for and what their angle is. That's when the chief decides he doesn't have time for us, so he shoots us.
Listen, I need your help. James Salma's in danger.
What are you doing? Don't get him involved.
The famous psychologist, Jane Salma? What the fuck have you got to do with her? Wait a minute. She was taking care of Green, right?
I need to get her out of here.
You've been screwing with the case this whole time? After I told you to drop it? Fucking course you couldn't. You are under arrest.
Boss.
Damn you. I don't have time for this anyway.
Soon after, a car crashes and comes barreling towards us. I don't know how we're still alive. We're exhausted in more ways than two. We have desync issues, mental issues, running on no sleep, just alcohol and cigarettes. We're coughing up blood. We stabbed ourselves, got into a car accident, got shot, and a car hit us. But our good friend Sarah encourages us to keep going anyway, for the sake of her body. When we do reach Salma, we hear the murderer's voice.
What's everyone got coming? From the lowest levels to the highest? Give up? Test. Bingo test.
He explains that he is able to take over everyone through synchro tests. That his overall plan is to have everybody drink the poison so that natural order can be restored and everybody can die a true death. Too tired and too slow, Selma shoots me, and before walking off, she says we should be thanking her. We're dreaming again, but it's actually a nightmare. When Rachel is on the beach, we try to get to her, but we can't because the Icarus pulls us away from her and brings us back to the depths of the ocean. In a way, I think this kind of depicts that James wants to be with Rachel, but he can't because he has yet to die a true death. Finally, James has his Icarus pulled and stored into the memory bank, waiting to be transferred to a new body. Now, I don't know about you, but there were still a lot of unanswered questions. I'm going to do my best to give my assessment of some of the questions that I still have, but let me know what you guys think. Okay, so who is the stranger? I think the stranger is almost certainly a dissociated part of James himself, stemming from his severe mental deterioration due to repeated body transfers. This is substantiated by several key moments in the game. I mean, there's the fact that the stranger can speak to us even when James has a new earpiece or when other communication channels are unavailable. This strongly suggests that this is a product of James's own mind and not an external figure. Also, when Sarah loses signal during the exploration of Green's secret chamber, the stranger is still able to communicate with us, reinforcing that the stranger is just in his own fractured psyche. James also frequently experiences vivid hallucinations, like seeing multiple versions of his dead wife Rachel. Or there's the ethereal blue tendrils of Icarus creeping across his vision. We see that the hallucinations crescendo in the scene where the stranger taunts him, whispering as James relives the train accident and the massacre of civilians. This all points to James's deteriorating mental state and the possibility that the stranger is a creation of his dissociative identity. And during the reconstruction of the train accident, James slips into first-person perspective that mirrors the killer's view, but the clues from the scene make it clear that he himself is the killer. His distorted sense of reality indicates that he can't fully accept the fact that he caused the massacre and that the stranger may be his mind's way of externalizing his guilt. Why did Rachel die? Rachel's death by poisoning her Icarus is a crucial turning point in both the narrative and James's psychological unraveling. Specific in-game moments further emphasize her choice and James's inability to cope. Throughout the game, Rachel's image appears in James's dreams, visions, and as part of his desynchronization episodes. In these moments, she often alludes to her dissatisfaction with immortality. And another thing, Rachel frequently says things like, "Don't you already know who the murderer is?" Or that one scene where she's talking about how living forever is bad and wrong. that basically tells us that she thinks that some people deserve to die a true death. These lines strongly indicate that she did not want to continue living in a system where life had become a mere commodity. Her words point to James's denial about her death and reinforce the idea that she voluntarily ended her life because she could not bear the hollow existence of body-swapping immortality. What was Green's true goal? Green's mental deterioration and eventual murder spree are directly linked to the world's body transfer technology and the philosophical consequences of immortality. Specific in-game elements highlight this descent into madness. When James finds the signed Declaration of Immortality in Green's apartment, it becomes clear that Green was instrumental in the creation of the Icarite system and the laws surrounding it. His signature symbolizes his initial belief in the technology's promise of eternal life. However, after the death of his wife and the discovery of the erosion of consciousness, Green realizes that the system he helped to create is deeply flawed. And one of the most critical in-game pieces of evidence is the recorded therapy session between Green and the psychologist Salma. This recording reveals that Green was suffering from severe desynchronization issues and the erosion of consciousness due to frequent body transfers. Salma advises him to take more ambrosia and undergo more synchro tests, but it's clear from the recording that Green is on the verge of a complete mental breakdown. Back at the sequence in Green's secret chamber, James finds the body of the secret society members scattered across the room. The reconstruction of the scene, as well as the recordings, verify that Green himself was killing the elites. This reveals that, in his psychosis, Green had turned against the system he had built. He understood the dangers of immortality, and I'd like to believe that maybe his wife was whispering in his ear, telling him that this was morally wrong. And so he decided to eliminate those who sought to perpetuate this system, making a desperate attempt to stop the rich from further exploiting the body transfer system. The in-game documents and recordings indicate that Green was working with Kovalev to sabotage these elites' plans to lower the age limit for body subscriptions and further exploit the poor. And this is further reinforced by the note from Green to Kovalev found in Icarus's safe, which hints at the coordinated efforts between the two men to disrupt the immortality system and prevent further degradation of society. Remember, Green and Kovalev were close. Kovalev's involvement in the plot is driven by his shared realization with Green that the Icarite system is inherently corrupt. Taking another look at the note that we found at Icarus's bar, the note reveals that Kovalev and Green had a plan to quote-unquote complete the mission, likely referring to the sabotage of the body subscription system. Kovalev's willingness to blow himself up during the Icarus shootout reinforces the idea that he was willing to go to extreme lengths to dismantle the system. There's also the part where the stranger tells us to look for the body that Kovalev was trying to get, George Boyle, another wealthy figure connected to the body subscription system. This highlights how Kovalev and Green were targeting key figures who perpetuated the exploitation of the poor. Boyle's family, as one of the purveyors of Icarite, was deeply involved in the system's creation, making him a target for Kovalev and Green to stop the societal decay caused by immortality. The game's larger message about the dangers of unchecked technological advancement and the commodification of life is evident throughout the dystopian setting and specific mechanics of the world. For example, the body subscription tax. The in-game implementation of the subscription tax forces people to pay a tax to keep their own bodies after turning 21. It is a clear critique of the widening class divide. The poor are literally being stripped of their physical autonomy if they can't afford to pay, reinforcing the game's thematic exploration of exploitation and inequality. There is the Icarite-induced hallucinations and desync tests, James's constant battle with synchronization issues, and his reliance on ambrosia, his repeated desync attacks are all symptoms of the deeper philosophical problem of immortality. It's unnatural. Even with the technological ability to transfer consciousness, the human mind is not meant to endure such frequent shifts, or even at all. This is echoed by the news articles found in Sarah's apartment, which warn of memory disorders and mental instability linked to prolonged use of the Icarite system. If we were meant to live forever, we would. And then there's the nightmare of Rachel and the ocean scene, the recurring beach hallucination where James tries and fails to reach his beloved wife. You can tell that he wants to die. He doesn't want to live forever. He's tired of this. He wants to be with his wife, even if that means a true and final death. But the Icarite is constantly pulling him under the water, preventing him from doing this. It's a symbolic representation of this struggle. It represents the weight of immortality, dragging James away from finding true peace. In summary, the murders were caused by Green and Kovalev in an attempt to undo the horrors of their own unnatural creation. James's pursuit of the killer was ultimately a journey to confront his own fractured mind, with the stranger representing his dissociative state. Rachel's death and Green's actions highlight the psychological and societal toll of a world where immortality is not only possible, but also deeply flawed. In a world where nobody wants to die, the truth is, sometimes nobody wants to live.